Let's move into Miami. They just got a convincing win over a then-ranked number 18 USF squad, and their path to the ACC Conference Championship game just got a lot more clear with Clemson's loss to Georgia Tech. How are we feeling about this USF win, and then the impact of Clemson's loss, or the win over USF, and then the impact of the Clemson loss?
Yeah, I mean, both are pretty significant for the Miami Hurricanes, and from a broader perspective, possibly the Florida State Seminoles as well, and just anybody looking to contend in the ACC conference. I think that for Miami, this kind of outlines a clear path where if you get through FSU at FSU, you look at Louisville, Stanford, SMU, Syracuse, NC State, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh. None of those teams really make you give you any pause or any room for concern. Obviously it's any given Saturday. I'm not saying that Miami is going to just run through all of these teams, but when you look at Miami and you look at some of these other teams, you start to think Miami has stars on both sides of the football. They're playing really good football, and they have 2 ranked wins at the time, going into whatever matchup they'll be going into. I just think that this Miami team looks really good, and I don't want to get too bullish on them. I am a Miami Hurricanes fan, but all signs point up because of the fact that we did get a new defensive coordinator over the offseason. The defense does look much improved. And I still want to see a little bit more from this Miami team. I'm saying all this, but as a Miami Hurricanes fan, we beat USF 50 to 15, I think, last year, 49-12 this year. Defense can look it can be a mirage if you beat up on bad teams, but the offense at the very least looks really good. Obviously, Josiah Schrader hasn't even been in for the Miami Hurricanes in the first 3 weeks of the season, and he's one of the best receivers, or at least the best returning receiver. CJ Daniels got an injury, but I'm hoping that he can be back at some point during the course of the season and some point soon. But he was a really good receiver. Malachi Toney should be one of the best receivers maybe to ever come out of Miami. He looks really good as a true freshman. Yeah, I know. I'm really high on Malachi Toney. But then Carson Beck is the Heisman favorite at this point, and rightfully so. He's looked very convincing through his first 2 games, and I'm just excited as my Hurricane fan. So you can take it over from here. But I think that the path for an ACC at least title game appearance looks pretty clear at this point.
Yeah, it looks good. I mean, obviously Clemson's first loss came out of conference, and they have South Carolina down the line, which could give them another loss, but we're just counting conference wins and losses here. So they still have a shot. They're not out of it, by any means necessary, but we're just going to have to take a look at some of the other teams within the conference. SMU got that loss to Baylor, so that was out of conference. So it's clear, but it might not always be like that. So we'll have to wait and see. Carson Beck played well. He had 2 interceptions, which you're keeping an eye on. Hey, what was going on there? Are we getting the Georgia Carson Beck here? But he looked good. The offense looked good. The wide receivers, as you mentioned, have answered the call. They lost their top 6 pass catchers last year. Every broadcast will mention that as the season goes on because they are playing really well. Running back by committee, working very well as well. I hear you about wanting to see a little bit more, though. The defense looks great, but they're going to continue to get tested. Just answer the call. Just keep answering the call. I think it feels like fool's gold or too good to be true whenever it comes to the Miami defense. It doesn't seem to be like that, but you just have to wait and see. Imagine this defense with Cam Ward last year. Would have been a great thing to see. I think the USF win is pretty interesting on its own because it wasn't a trap game, if that makes sense. If they had lost to Florida, they obviously wouldn't have been ranked. And I think they still would have been on Miami's radar, depending on how that game would have been. I know this is a big if and going off on fantasy land here, but Miami was coming into this game hearing the noise about USF. People saying if they win this game, they're going to be number 1 in the country. And they're a good football team, but that could have been a trap game. It wasn't because they won. Miami came into it knowing who they were playing, and they took it to them. I thought they looked really good. They didn't get caught in a trap game that could have been if USF would have lost. We're looking at these Florida games here coming up for Miami. They should be able to take care of business, I think, against Florida. Here, College game day coming in. Florida State looks a lot tougher than it did preseason-wise, and that is something to watch for sure, and I don't want to discredit them at all. I think this Miami team seriously has a good case to be the number 2 team in the country as we've seen through the first 3 weeks. So if they were maybe somewhere around number 12 and we didn't know exactly what their ceiling was and they didn't have one of their wins that they do have, one of their ranked wins, I would say maybe I would be more worried about the Florida State game. Less so now because I think Miami is just that good, even with Florida State being good. So as long as Miami takes care of SMU down the road, this, dare I say, could be an undefeated regular season. I think it's already looking towards that. I know a lot of people might think Miami homers here, but I'm not a Miami fan. But
Yeah,
they look good.
yeah, they do look good, and we'll see how the season plays out because it's at some point in 2017 we were 10-0, and then we walk into Pittsburgh, they ruin our perfect season, and then you go and you lose against Clemson in the ACC championship game, get absolutely destroyed, and then lose the Orange Bowl in Miami. So a depressing end of that season, and you never know. Literally, a team can fall apart at the very end. So I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, and it sounds like we already did that like a little bit already, but it looks favorable. And then from the Clemson point of view, they do have Florida State at home, and then some of the other games don't look as hard. Obviously, the ACC isn't like one of those super tough conferences, but if they slip up at all in the ACC after this game, there's not much room for error. I think both ACC teams that play in the championship game will have only one conference loss, and they have to play at home against Florida State, and then they have no room for error if that ends up being true. So and if they don't win the ACC at this point, they're not going to get into the college football playoff because I just don't think that they're going to be both Florida State and South Carolina, and they already have that loss to Georgia Tech. So